Welcome to the show, everybody. Michael with CoronavirusDiaries, and I am fortunate to be able to speak again with Joe Cebula, the co-host of the Maximus Podcast, a personal trainer by trade. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
It's been a wild ride the past couple of weeks.
Yes, it has. In fact, we had talked. It was just a few days before the killing of George Floyd here in Minneapolis, and now Minneapolis is the epicenter of what a lot of people are calling the largest civil rights movement in recorded history. So
Yeah.
it's a unique thing to be
Yeah.
the epicenter of this global movement. So I'm curious. I'm working on this project, and we're just going to jump right into it. So I was documenting a lot of the protests before it turned into riots and looting and anarchy, and then I documented through the riots. And I've been kicking around this idea of, one, COVID-19 and the lockdowns as being a catalyst for, just a wildfire. And this notion of being like locked down and not able to be active, be social. I was curious if you could share some thoughts on, physical fitness, being as you are a professional trainer, and how physical fitness or the lack thereof can impact people, their esteem, kind of just who they are as an individual.
Well, yeah, and I think you hit it. I mean, the COVID-19 has just affected everybody, right? And we mentioned sort of that hierarchy of needs. And all of a sudden you're trapped indoors, you're not working, maybe you've been furloughed, laid off. And so your whole psychological realm has been affected by this, because now where you thought you had some security because you had a job and you had income and you were able to pay the bills, like that's all in question. You thought you had some security because you had this job and you were appreciated by the boss, and suddenly you found out you're non-essential. And so they got to cut you. And then you're wondering like, gosh, well, what am I worth? And like, you just keep getting chipped down layer after layer after layer. And then you get down towards the bottom layer, which is all the physical stuff. Right. And it's like, well, what can I focus on? What can I do? And people like me, like this is great. All the stuff that distracts me from my physical goals is like out of the way now. I can really get down and dirty and just focus on my exercise, really dial in my nutrition and try to make the most of this time I have to do that. And other people, like I said, their whole thing has just crumbled. Yeah. And they're down at this bottom level, and they haven't built that base. They haven't built a base of knowledge or experience doing the physical stuff, right? And so when you're at the very base level of the hierarchy of needs, and it's all the physiological stuff, you need food, you need water, right? You need a shelter. It all builds off of that. You know what I mean? And so when somebody realizes like their base level of their pyramid is complete garbage, like it's really overwhelming for folks. It's like, where do you even start? What do you do? And you have this choice of getting to work on it, which is hard. It's really hard because you have to admit to yourself that you haven't done that work, that everything else was a bit of a lie. It was based on lies, or based on this idea that I will first self-actualize, then I'll figure out my exercise regimen. You know what I mean? And it's like, it doesn't really work that way. And so it's hard. That's a tough pill to swallow. And the other option is to just, placate your mind through, day drinking, video games, binging Netflix. Yeah. And then we get these moments in history like we've had during this thing. And especially here in Minneapolis, where like all of a sudden this thing happens, which is egregious, which is very eye-opening for people who've been in denial about the state of affairs. What's stopping them from walking downtown? What's stopping them from going and volunteering now? Like literally nothing, So you've got all these people now who were already kind of psychologically on edge because the whole world had changed, very not feeling safe, not feeling secure, not feeling appreciated, loved.
The esteem is smashed,
and trying to build up, like and they're just on this base level. So you're at the lowest level of psychological functioning. Just and something like this happens. And this is so visceral. You know what I mean? This is so like, how can it not just rend your heart when you watch that video of that cop kneeling on George Floyd, and like the emotional impact of that, it's strong. And so now you've got these people who, guess what? They ain't got jobs. They ain't got any other worries.
Basics. Yeah.
Yeah. And
where does physical fitness and just where does it fit in pulling people out of a spiral?
Well, this is like the whole basis of most of the work that I do in the Maximus Podcast in general, is that the stuff that we learn in the gym, I would say in the gym, but it can be anywhere. The
Sure.
stuff we learn through training translates to the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
So think, what does it take to look good and to be fit? Well, like, you've got to have your nutrition dialed in. You've got to have a regimen. Like, you have to have the right challenges to your body. And the discipline, the consistency, like all of these things have to be in place. And then that body that you dreamed of starts to form. Then you have like the time component of having to stay with it for a long time and allowing those changes to take place. If you're in a place where you're not sure where your next meal is coming from, how are you going to dial in your nutrition? You know, like if you're living on the streets and you're basically, you know, begging for alms, like, you don't get to be picky, you know, like, oh, sorry, dude, I'm low carb, you know, or do you have a vegan sandwich? Is this vegan? Because like, I'm vegan. Like, you don't get that choice when you just need food.
Yeah. When I was at the 3rd precinct, when it was burning down on Lake in South Minneapolis, directly across from it is this huge parking lot, and there's a Target and a Cub Foods that are side by side. And what was interesting is seeing people pushing shopping carts of food out. I mean, there's the looters that were going after TV and the electronics and all the things, but then you see people that are filling shopping carts with food, pushing out, and it's just kind of, I mean, it's giving me goosebumps now to think that, I mean, there were opportunists in that, hey, we can get what we want, and they chose that very bottom rung of the hierarchy needs to motivate, like food, like, let's get food in our house. And that spoke volumes. You know, you saw the people taking the TVs, or I saw them, you know, they're pulling out TVs, but then you see the people with shopping carts and you're like, yo, that says a lot of the time. You know, and it was what, 3 months into the lockdowns for COVID. And so I can see how the getting yourself to that level of, you know, esteem, which I like to tie physical fitness and, you know, mental health into, is could be significantly impacted.
Well, there's an upshot to doing that work before you're in crisis, obviously, you know. So like, if you've already kind of got things dialed in, then you know what to look for, you know. If you do have, you know, particular dietary needs, you know, like for me, if I'm standing near the grocery store and the city's on fire and I'm thinking, crap, it's survival, I'm heading to the meat section right now. You know what I mean? Like, I know exactly, I need these steaks, I need this burger, and I'm good to go for like weeks. You know, for other people, it's like they're going to head right to like the bulk grains, you know, because that's what they're going to live off of. Like, it does help you in crisis when you have those things that you know about yourself, and you know, well, I won't have to worry about food. Now I can worry about safety. You know what I mean? If you don't have food, you will take risks when it comes to your safety. You know, you might even start looting food because you don't know if you're going to have food available. The rest of the store burns down. Where's your next meal coming from? You don't know. And that's an issue. I was watching a video on that just yesterday, that a lot of these neighborhoods that have been hit, like, people can't get food. Now they got to travel miles and miles to get to a grocery store because the one they were at got just absolutely ransacked. Yeah,
that's 6 blocks this way. That's South Minneapolis. It's wild. Like, I was actually just random getting my tires rotated. Just a thing that you just do periodically throughout the year. And the place that I go to is 5 blocks away. It's a tire shop on University and Snelling, or not Snelling, Hamlin area. And I pulled up and I was like, oh, that's right. All their windows are smashed out, plywood, and outside it's spray painted, yes, we're open, yes, we're open. I'm like, man, this is bizarre, right? So I pull up, walk in the door, and like, it's plywood city in there. And I'm like, yeah, so it's good you guys didn't get your store burned down. And the guy looks at me, he's like, well, they tried, it just didn't take off. So like, that store was actually, they had started a fire inside of it. It didn't burn the building down. And they were just sitting there like, this is the new normal, right? Everything, all these businesses in this area in South Minneapolis, Midway, Midtown, Uptown, boarded.
It's just, well, and think about, you know, again, this is Minneapolis. Like, winter is coming. Like, these businesses have got to get to a point where they can put some honest to God windows up, because that plywood is not going to keep it nice and warm in there when it's 40 below. Like, wow.
And that was,
but again,
I was walking around right after it was a couple of days after the curfews went into effect, and it had kind of calmed down to where the stuff happening at night, there weren't structural fires rampant. There wasn't looting. It was just kind of this weird, uneasy feeling of military helicopters flying around, and you would hear and see movements of troops and law enforcement. But during the day, I was over again back by, I wanted to go and document the aftermath, right? So I'm over by 3rd Precinct and all the structure fires there. And I saw some building assessors for an insurance company walking through the area with their clipboards. And I just walked up right away, because one of the things that I kept hearing some of these people in my network say is, this is necessary. It's what needs to happen, like burn the businesses, they've got insurance. And I really had a hard time with that, because one, I know insurance doesn't happen overnight. And two, there's an income involved with, once the income is gone, insurance it's only gonna last so long, and you have to figure out how to rebuild, like you're saying with the winter. So I talked to these guys and just said, yo, what's the story with insurance and this? And they said, well, it really depends on what kind of insurance you have, how good the insurance is. But yeah, some of this stuff can take months or even more than a year to.
And my point is, like, if you're talking about like an immigrant-owned business, the guy doesn't know the intricacies of insurance. Like, he just had I mean, it's like think of all the Somalians that have come over here. I mean, they're fleeing like kind of a war-torn area to give their families a little bit better night. And they open up a little corner shop, and it's pretty easy to start a business in the US. It's kind of hard to make one legally compliant. Like, you kind of have to know what's up. And so maybe their business is registered, maybe it isn't, maybe they have insurance. It's probably a low level, like it's what they could afford. Like, it's not just going to pay for all of these things. And like you said, it's not like the payout is the next day. These businesses are going to be boarded up through the winter. It's going to take time. And no, it doesn't affect the insurance companies, because I promise you, they're still going to have a banner year. They're still making money. So you did all of this stuff, and literally the only people who suffered are the people whose businesses you burnt down. And their families, and that community is what suffered. So I get it, let the rage out, but I mean, it was misdirected. It was misdirected, and I feel like that's an excuse, and a pretty lame one. But to tie it back to like physical fitness. So let's just say that you decide, hey, I'm gonna lose, pick a number, 30 pounds, and I'm gonna get in shape. And you start getting to work on it, and it's hard. You don't just like go from no workout to working out every day. Like, there's a lot of stuff that has to change. And some of those things can only change at the rate which cells divide, right? So you're trying to grow new muscle. You're trying to grow new bones. Your bones do grow throughout your life. The cells live and die and replace. And I think what they say is, like, you have a whole new body, like every 7 years, like every cell in your body is replaced. And so it takes time for some of those physiological. If you've got weak muscles and weak bones, they don't just get stronger. Like, some of them kind of have to die, and new ones need to grow in that start stronger, So these processes take time. And that's the real lesson, I think, in fitness, is having a goal, having the drive to do on a day-to-day basis what it takes until that long-term goal is met. Because how many people in their career just feel like, I deserve this promotion, just feel like I deserve to be the manager, even though they probably haven't done anything specific to earn that, right? I want a TV. I want it today. I don't want to save up for it and then buy the TV cash. I'm going to put it on layaway. I'm going to, I'm going to use the store credit card. That's why these things exist. That's why everybody's got debt, because I want it today. Some things you cannot have today. You cannot go into the doctor's office and walk out from 30% body fat to 6-pack abs. It does not work that way. There's a cost, and it is. And it's that perseverance and the patience that it takes to get there. So you decide, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. I'm going to get jacked. And you start this process. And over 6 months or a year, you actually do start changing, right? Now you're moving up this hierarchy of needs of like, okay, so I had to figure out nutrition, kind of got that figured out. I've got my workout routine figured out. I've able to find a way to fit that into my life, my work, my family. Like, there's balance here. I'm starting to get good. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, man, I feel like I'm getting there. Now your sense of confidence, your sense of self-love starts improving, and your improved confidence helps improve your relationships with other people. Your esteem is improving. And then eventually you get to this point where now people look at you and they're like, gosh, you're some kind of expert in fitness. How did you do this? Can you help me lose weight? Right? Can you help me achieve what you've achieved?
I'm
and
curious with the goal. You've talked about a goal, and you mentioned a goal of losing 30 pounds. What's your thoughts on a goal that's, targeting a specific result as opposed to a goal that is focused on a process?
So these are the things that this is what you learn along the way, right? These are the issues that you run into where you're like, I want to lose 30 pounds, and you end up losing 30 pounds and you don't look anything like you thought you were going to look like. You were 330 pounds and you lost 30 pounds, you're still 300 pounds. You know what I mean? If you were 130 pounds and you lost 30 pounds, like you're a pretty tiny little person at that point. Yeah. So what you end up learning along the way is it's, and I'm sure you've heard trainers say this, it's not the number on the scale. It really isn't the number on the scale. I don't care what the scale says. And if I looked at you, Micah, and I said, look, dude, you're going to weigh 250 pounds, but you're going to have the body of your dreams. Do you care how much you weigh at that point?
No.
Now, if Dwayne Johnson walks into the room where you're sitting right now and he says, oh, hey, Micah, Joe sent me over. Hi. I just want you to know I weigh 300 pounds. What would you say to The Rock? Yeah.
Jack.
I mean, maybe. What if he said, I weigh 250? You'd be like, I mean, yeah, I guess you could weigh 250. Like, that's a 50-pound swing, and you wouldn't even know the difference.
Yeah.
And on the other end of the scale, use someone like Rihanna. Rihanna's hot. She's amazing. If she told you she weighed 140 pounds, would you say she was lying?
I don't say anything about women's weight ever.
But I mean, what if she's like, hey, I weigh 140 pounds, and you were like, cool. And if she was like, I weigh 110 pounds, you'd be like, sure. Until I pick her up and like, yeah, I guess you do weigh that much. Like, the weight doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you look the weight,
more about the technique and the process and the program, because that's where I've with my own routines that I've done, picking a goal more like I want to be able to bench a certain amount or run for a certain amount of time distance wise. I want to be able to run, so many miles in so many minutes.
How about this? What if your goal was, I want to continually improve every day for 6 months?
That's a great goal because
you
always have something
something, and every little improvement is a win, right? So you go in on day one and you're like, okay, what's my bench press? And you go get under the bar and you're pinned under a 45-pound bar.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the next day you press it up. Well, that's a victory. Congratulations. You know what I mean? Like, that's a win. And there's a million ways that you can win. It's not just like one specific thing, but that idea is just like, well, my arms are really sore, so I'm probably not going to win bench press today. So maybe I'll go for a run. Maybe I'll do something else that I can improve at. And it's like you get this constant string of victories.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Stringing them together.
The conversation I was just having with my sister was right at the pinnacle of when COVID was locking everything down. She's down in a different state. Government shut her business, denied her unemployment. She didn't get any of the loans. And at one moment she was talking to me, she's just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And we were talking a bit about fitness and like the gyms are closed. And she says, you know what, I got to go. I'm going to go for a bike ride. And it's like in the middle of this, like crushing, it's been weeks without income. Her business is closed. She doesn't know what is going to happen. We're still all unsure really of what COVID is or how it's going to impact. So then fast forward, a while, business is open now. She's back in the gym training and we're just chatting last night. And she goes, what's crazy, Micah, is when I went back to the gym, I was performing better at leg presses and all this stuff. And she's like, I don't even know. I've been out of the gym for so long. I'm like, Amber, you were riding 15 or 20 miles, multiple times a week. You just changed it up. You looked at the opportunity of like, well, I don't have a gym. I have a bike though. I'm going to go ride a bike and just go, and she did it. And then sure enough, like now she's on the back end of this kind of crazy COVID thing.
Yeah.
Let it going, hey, I actually improved while I was in this like turmoil of trying to figure out, the next move. So,
well, and think about that just again, from that self-actualization point, right? you do all this training, you get to a point and you do feel good about yourself, you know, and you're confident and you're walking around. Like I'm wearing a sleeveless shirt right now. There was a time in my life I would never do that. And like now I'm kind of proud of my shoulders.
Yeah, man, you have a good story. Good story.
I'm pale. I'm looking at myself in the thing. I'm like, holy crap.
You got the farmer tan going too, bro.
I know.
I got that this weekend. I'm so proud. Norwegians.
My beautiful Irish skin. It's just glistening. Glistening, like, oh, put a dimmer on. But like I said, so now you're at this point where you're confident and you feel good, and then something bad happens. Like all of a sudden like you lose your job. But if my confidence is real, then I know that there's something that I do that brings value to other people.
Yeah.
Right. There's something in where I'm at in my career. Now, again, my career is physical fitness. And so it's fairly easy for me to figure out what my thing is. You know, all else fails. People always need a coach. People always need somebody to help them find motivation and help them make that change.
Sure.
And I've been through it and people recognize that. And so there's this value that I have. So the question is, well, okay, I can't deliver that value in a gym because the gym is closed. What else can I do? How else can I get my message out? Yeah. And we live in a time where social media is huge. It's a big part of things. So I take my message to social media, and you know what? It resonates with people.
That was a big thing I noticed with, you know, entrepreneurs, specifically people in business, was when all this started taking place and it just started escalating to closures and lockdowns and all this, was the pivot. And there was two groups of people. There was the group that was kind of saw it as like, I'm a victim and just, you know, hung out, and it was unfortunate. And then there's the others that, you know, gritted their teeth and grinded and tried some things. Maybe all of the things didn't necessarily all work out, but I've seen that a lot of the folks that did that, they benefited, you know, whether from a learning experience, and now they're on the back end of the lockdowns going like, holy, you know, I learned more in 3 months than I would have learned in 3 years because of what I did. So,
well, I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and I said I was fortunate because for me to have like a successful online business, I kind of had all the pieces in place. Like I'd done enough, like I kind of knew, but what I needed was to commit to it. What I needed was just a push to say, okay, you have to focus on this, and don't worry about that other stuff for right now. Don't worry about, you know, the rest of corporate life, you know, trying to worry about the benefits, retirement. Like you just need to focus on your online business and it will take off.
Did you feel like the security net or the safety net that got pulled away from underneath you just forced that narrative?
Yes. I mean, the whole reason I ended up working for a global gym was to have that little bit of security net, to have a known amount of income in a known environment with known benefits versus, being unemployed where it's like, okay, I'm kind of getting what I can afford, and I hope the coverage is good enough, and I hope I never need it because I know it ain't. So it's nice to have that, and it helps make you feel safe and secure. But as soon as that got tugged away, it was like, okay, I have to focus on this lower level stuff. I've got to go. I've got to dive in. And that was what I was able to do. And so it shouldn't come as a surprise that, you know, like I have, if you look at my Instagram, like there is a theme to it. You know what I mean? There is a look to it. So I actually had already put a lot of that work into it. Now, I pity the person who had done none of that, maybe didn't even have an Instagram account, and is now trying to figure all that stuff out, because it is a hard crash course and a lot of stuff that I've been tinkering with over the past like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've got this head start on a lot of people. So it was good for me to have that safety net pulled away. And taking it back to our political situation right now, that's what's really happened, is a lot of people have had a safety net pulled away, where now they have to focus on something that's even more basic. You know, we've been living in this society where, you know, there are people out there who deny racism exists. And it's like, it seems like a naive standpoint, and maybe it is. It's just naive. And I don't say that as like naivete is a bad thing. No, I mean, if everybody in the world was naive about racism, it probably wouldn't exist. But be that as it may, it does exist, and we know it exists, and now you have to face that. And so wherever this reality that you built on these base beliefs that everything is, again, a hierarchy, like we have to go back and we have to re-examine this.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, anybody that really, this is just off the top, the idea that racism doesn't exist. I watched that 13th documentary, and the fact that they played A Birth of a Nation in the White House, and it was proclaimed as this amazing thing. Like, if anybody even remotely disagrees with the potential of systemic racism in legal system and just this country, just knowing that and actually like getting a glimpse of what that is and what it's about, I don't know beyond that how you could possibly still, be naive to what is. I mean, it's within the last 100 years that it's like that was a thing in our White House. So, wow.
But I don't know. You hear this all the time now, like a white guy saying, "Well, I never owned slaves," like I never had anything to do with that. And it's like, what we're starting to get to is all these like little defensive mechanisms because your safety net has been pulled away, because you've been knocked down, and you realize that your esteem was maybe misplaced. It's a psychological.
There was a little more privilege that allowed a certain. There was a privilege.
Yeah.
People don't want to admit, because then that would mean that they wouldn't have it to leverage.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world we live in. It's amazing to think that this moment in time, 2020, I think is going to go down in the history books as a very pivotal moment in history.
I hope so. I think for that to be the case, like people really have to internalize the lessons of this.
Yeah.
If everybody in the world, let's just assume everybody in the world has figured out nutrition, has figured out shelter, has figured out their physical fitness, right? Everybody in the world has taken ownership of their physical makeup and their being. These emotional type things we would approach very differently. We would approach with patience, with discipline, with long-term goals, even if in the short term it's uncomfortable to have these conversations.
Sure.
I don't know that that's the case. I feel like we're still a nation of people who want instant gratification. Yeah. No justice, no peace is basically saying we want it now. And it's like, it's important, guys. It's really important to be out there and to keep the movement alive and to keep the protests going.
Patience, like in fitness.
Patience, because these things take time. And the people right now, especially like the white people in power who are finally hearing this message and reacting to it, they're not hearing what you're really saying. There's a lot of miscommunication going on, and they're just reacting because they're kind of scared of the mob.
Yeah.
And so give them time to help process, to help understand what's being asked of them. And don't expect like all police departments to just be disbanded overnight. Like there's going to be some reforms. There's going to be paperwork filled out. There's going to be guys crunching numbers about budgets. There's going to be considerations. I mean, even like in Minneapolis now, they've talked about disbanding the police, but they don't really know what that means. Yeah. And in the meantime, I think since June 1st, we've had 38 shootings in Minneapolis. And so it's like the need for police still exists.
You think we don't like rapes and murders and missing children and a bunch of these things that take place that are part of the police department's responsibility to go find these kids. Like, okay, there's a lot of big questions.
I'm going to ask you a question. I don't want to like dive into any kind of divisive politics here, but sure. Micah, if you were working for a company and they were just like, yeah, the company's shutting down in 3 months and we really don't appreciate you and the work you do is just not that important, how long are you going to stick it out and why?
Well, I can tell you this. From a place when I had been in corporate and I had made up my mind that I was leaving. And then from the moment that you put in your notice, your 2-week notice, I actually gave them a month just because I was trying to be, a little forward with it. They basically, it was almost like the mentality was like, all right, just shift your workload and we got it. Like, we don't expect a whole lot because it's almost like in that moment, they're going, okay, you're not going to sit and grind long hours and, spend extra time trying to solve these problems that in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you're not going to be involved with anymore. And I still was involved and I still did what I needed to do. But as far as like the grind, it reduced considerably those last few weeks that I was there. I was just.
Yeah. So now look at the fact that Minneapolis PD, which everybody agrees is a bit of a cesspool and needs a lot of work, and has already been disbanded, is not getting supported. The cops are still, they're still being portrayed as the bad guys in this whole thing. And there are still officers showing up for duty to do the job, even though they have no idea if they're even going to have a job a month from now, if they're going to get, assault attack. And so you think about like, if you put me in the boat of like, yeah, your company's shutting down and it's like, I'm already looking for something else. I'm not going to ride this to the end. You know what I mean? Like I've got a family, I got to figure some stuff out, but here you go. Here's a bunch of people who really believe in what they're doing. And, the other side of the argument doesn't recognize that that's the
frustrating
position
for me is like through the riots and the protests, and then I know we're pushing the time limit here, but I kept seeing the ACAB tag everywhere, right? All cops are bad. And I see that as being par for the course or in parallel with, grouping an entire community by religion as what a terrorist, or the color of their skin as criminals or racist. It's just a blanketed statement. And I think anybody that actually, processes any sort of intelligence see that that's wrong.
It's reactionary, right?
Yeah.
It's very reactionary because, again, there's an emotional reaction. I feel like the protest made sense to me.
100%.
Yes. You know what I mean? I tell you what, the Sunday after all of the riots happened, when they were just marching through town, there were like 3 groups and they converged on the bridge. Like, there were tears in my eyes. That was like one of the most beautiful things.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow, look at these people and look at how passionate they are and how much they care, and everything in the world that had to happen for all of these people to be able to come together and to say, look, the looting is done, the fires are done, and we are here because we have something very important to talk about. And unfortunately, the moment kind of got ruined when that guy drove the truck onto the bridge. But up until that point, like, holy cow, like that was just a beautiful,
spectacle.
Beautiful moment. Yeah. But the looting part of it, like you said before, there's 2 parts. I mean, there was just the absolute emotional outrage and it needed an expression. It needed a way to get out and to get people's attention, and it was a cry for help. And then you've got people just opportunistically diving on it. Some people because they just wanted a free TV, and some people because they want to drive some narrative and keep a people's down, and all these outside influences. And that was like a constant thing that the administrators were talking about, was there just seems to be some outside influence here.
And there definitely was. I mean, there was so much happening. It was a liquid situation, and in any environment like that, in
the end, what I came to was, like, at the moment watching, and I'll be honest with you, I was like glued to your live feed, like, just because you were down in it, and I was like following you and watching what you were doing constantly, because I was also of a mind of like, I might need to run in there with like the A-team and extract you.
I had some people hit me up after, they're like, yo, it got a little spicy in there for a moment. Like,
yeah. But like I said, that emotional thing, it needed that output. And in the end, when you look back and you say, well, okay, so like the 3rd precinct, like, burned to the ground, which as a statement, very, very big moment, a very, very big condemnation of police brutality, of an institution, like burning Target down. I keep using the example, you'll remember this, Noodles and Company. Yeah. Why the hell are you burning down Noodles and Company? What is that accomplishing? Like, you don't like noodles? Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not my favorite restaurant. Like, I don't know that I've ever actually eaten there, but like, that's an odd target. That's just like, you're bored. That doesn't make any sense to me. But when we do look back at the damage, and we look back at like what got hurt, man, it could have been so much worse. It could have been bodies in the streets. It could have been all out gun war with the police. And it really wasn't, you know what I mean? It was not just a lot of,
there was actually, there was a sniper in Texas that shot a bunch of cops, killed 5 of them. There was some heavy duty stuff that took place, but
even that could have just boiled over into all out rebellion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, really, like, props to 98% of the people on this planet, because they managed to keep their shit together when they really didn't need to.
Yeah.
It was already going.
That's what I was most concerned about is, the city is one thing, it can kind of be cordoned, but if suddenly like all these, without going into security related stuff, which we don't need to do that. It could have been a lot worse. And thankfully for all the people in the burbs and, the people that still believe in everything is rainbows and sunshine, they can still.
Well, and again, like we said before, I really hope that people internalize it. And I hope the people that weren't directly impacted by it are still impacted by it. And over time we'll continue to think about, like, why this all happened and why it happened the way it happened, and really be open to hearing what people have to say. And then the people who've got something to say, that the Tuesday when everybody was just posting like Black Lives Matter stuff, like, I'm just listening. We're listening. Like, I hope that the people who are talking, who need to talk, are really thinking about what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
Because I've heard a lot of stuff that has really made me want to just disengage and say, you know what, you're on your own. Because I don't want to sit here and be blamed for everything that's wrong in the world any more than anybody else does. Like, I want to be an ally, and you start feeling really unappreciated and unwanted. Like,
yeah,
if you want to be my friend,
heavy stuff that was emotional. It was
for everybody, you know what I mean? And that's important to recognize. There's not just one group of people who's upset right now. There's a lot of people who are upset. But like, if you're my friend, Micah, and you need me to do something, just ask, man. You know what I mean? So like, my friends who have dark skin, if there's something you need me to do, guys, like, I'm here for you. Just ask. Just ask it. Like, don't try to educate me. Don't try to like change my worldview unless you feel like that's exactly what needs to happen. And then what you need to do is you need to ask, say, hey man, can we talk? And ask me what I know and ask me what I feel. Like, those are the kinds of things that happen, and they don't happen in the midst of emotional turmoil. And they don't happen, like I said, when that security net has been ripped away from you and you're just in defensive mode because you're just trying to survive.
Yeah, one of the conversations I was just in recently with another gentleman was talking about how the narrative per city is different. If you look at Minneapolis versus Chicago versus Houston versus New York, every single narrative, there might be the underlying fundamentals of equality and, anger at excessive force and a number of things. But when you start moving different cities throughout even just the states, even, it changes dramatically based on which city, which state you're in. And that was kind of where the conversation went, which was, there's not going to be the answer. There's not like the one thing that's going to work for the states and the globe. It's going to be case by case basis, which state are you in, where, like, what really, dig into the details. And again, back to the patience, having patience for the system, which a lot of people have lost faith in, and in a lot of ways, the way
but the process, you can hate you can hate your entire system of government, and it can be completely corrupt. And some people feel that way about our system right now, but the process is the same. The process is to engage in it, to change things where you can make changes, to do the work, and to do the work consistently. You can't just show up one day for a protest and expect it to stick. You know what I mean?
A hasty decision is what the system is designed to prevent, like these hasty knee-jerk decisions.
Yeah.
Emotional quick response. I don't know about you, but in my own world over the last my life, any kind of moment where you have to make a really fast decision, if you had a little more time to actually make that decision, there's a chance it would be a little bit better thought out and executed. But yeah, man, I really appreciate this conversation. It was it kind of hit on a lot of points and a lot of current, relevant topics. The fitness being the one that was,
just to wrap it all up, like, when you take responsibility for your own self and your own development, and you go through that process, like I was just saying, that process applies to literally everything. To look at, where can I make change? What am I capable of doing today that's going to get me into the position where I'm capable of doing something else tomorrow? Like that, it's a process, and it's easier to learn that process with something as simple as like doing a couple of push-ups and maybe going for a slow jog, training for something and learning patience and discipline and perseverance and learning what it means to have an indomitable spirit, which is one of my core values. All of that stuff very much applies to making vast political change. It's just higher up on that hierarchy. Because again, if you're down on the ground getting the snot kicked out of you every day, and you don't have food and you don't have shelter, I don't give a crap who the president is. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm focused on this. But if we're thinking big picture right now, then we got to admit we're not in a bad place. But the more we stay, if we ignore those bottom levels of things and we don't take care of ourselves individually, we're not going to be able to take care of ourselves as a society. I'm not going to be in a good position to be a good father, to be a good friend. If I've got
locally with yourself, then look at your community, and then start escalating from there. That's a common narrative that's come up in a number of discussions, is start locally. What can you work on And if you can fix that, or you make improvements, then start looking bigger and broader. But if you just start at the top of this heap of this mountain of information, it's going to get overwhelming rapidly, and you're going to lose, patience more than anything. So,
yeah. And it's frustrating. This is where you end up with people like, conservatives can't have conversations with liberals. Republicans can't have conversations with Democrats, because they're all focused on this top thing. We got to get the president out. And it's like, he really doesn't have that much sway right now. He really
there's a whole bunch of this underlying stuff that needs to get sorted first. Wow. Awesome, Joe. Well, I really, truly appreciate your time. Thank you, as always, for coming on the show, Joe.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy our conversations, and, I'm here for you.
Outstanding. For all the viewers and listeners, you can check out all the information on how to connect with Joe and check out his podcast, his physical fitness platforms. But until next time, stick around. We got more coming at you.